Okay, welcome back to another episode of the Break It Down for Brackens podcast. I'm excited to have Patrick Blood, the owner of Blackwell Property Management in Charlestown, West Virginia. Patrick, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thanks for working with me through my technical difficulties. If you've been on the podcast with me in the past or in the future, you should know I will mess something up. Traditionally, it's one small thing which requires us to start over. So, for the second time, and the first time for you listeners, but Patrick, the second time, give me a little bit of background and how did you get into the property management game?
Okay. So in 2003, I bought a one-way ticket to America from Dublin and had been offered a promotion at a company I worked for on a Friday evening, asked for the weekend to consider it. The Sunday of that weekend, I bought the one-way ticket. I went into my old job on the Monday, handed in my notice, told him I'd bought a one-way ticket, declined the promotion obviously, and my boss, to his ever-loving credit, said that I was a crazy bastard for trying this. He wished he had done something similar to this when he was younger, and that if it didn't work out, he would hold my position for, I think it was 6 months.
Well, that's really nice.
Yeah.
You must have been doing something right there.
Yeah. So I kind of left knowing that if this was a stupid move, I had something to fall back on at home without losing too much ground. Bought the ticket on the Sunday, left on the following Tuesday, so a week and 2 days or whatever, a week and 3 days afterwards. Landed in DC National Airport. It was a 99 Irish pound ticket at the time. It was like 6 layovers, took 26 hours to get here.
Wow.
But I was 22. It was fun and spontaneous, so I didn't care. Landed International Airport February 12th, 2003, which was the biggest snowstorm that you had here in like 30 years. There's 4 foot snow on the ground.
Whoa. Did you have people here? Did you have friends you were linking up with? You were
just completely winged it. Decided I'd figure it all out. Got into the taxi. My bags didn't make it. My bags went to an airport called DCS. I had landed at DCA. DCS was some regional airport in Madagascar. Took me 3 weeks to get my bags. Got into the taxi and without my bags, and the taxi driver asked where I was going. I was like, I actually don't know. I didn't even book a hotel. I just bought a ticket and here I am. So bring me downtown to a hotel downtown. So traveled around America for about 6 months. It was got to a bunch of states. I kind of picked them randomly. I'd go to National Airport. This is after the snow cleared, obviously. Would go to National Airport, look at the departures board, pick a flight that was leaving within a few hours of me getting there, and I just kind of got to different cool cities that way. Some of them weren't quite as cool. Like I went to Salt Lake City. That was pretty boring. But San Diego, I ended up spending a week there. San Francisco, I spent a week there. Denver, I spent 10 days there. So I got to see the other corners of the country. DC was the right size city though, and it was on the East Coast. So if I did need to get home quick, it was easy to bail.
Sure.
After a couple of months of traveling, I took on a summer job caddying at a country club in DC, just to kind of keep the money coming in. Met the owner of a property management company while I was caddying there and got to know him well. I was caddying 3 or 4 days a week with him, so he got to know me very well. He had a similar reaction to my initial story. He must be crazy to get here. Asked me if I wanted to chat to his people. I had an interview with his people and began leasing in a luxury high-rise apartment building in DC called McLean Gardens. And that was my intro to an industry that didn't even exist in Dublin at the time. I'm not even sure it exists now. There is the apartment buildings with the concierge and the fitness centers, and
right.
they're not there.
Oh, I actually have a similar management background. When after I graduated from St. Joe's and did some grad school at Temple University in Philadelphia, before I even graduated there on a master's path, I got a job working luxury amenities in New York City.
Yeah.
And then because I was a little sharper than the average manager, I went from 1 property to 5, and then I just subway around the city, making sure things were tight.
Yeah.
making sure people were up to speed. But I always wondered what was happening in the leasing office. So that position, that's for rentals, not to purchase.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, it was purely rental. And I worked at that position for all of 1 year. Within that year, I made it from new guy to the top leaser in the company.
Wow.
And then that got me promoted to property manager. And then over the next 4 years, I worked up to a regional property manager position. So I had 2,000 or 2,500 apartments that I was responsible for by that point.
Well, that's okay. That's good. So then, knowing that you wanted to be a business person when you were younger,
Yeah.
and that entrepreneurial spirit, the adventurous type, coming to America with no plan, and then kind of learning a trade, learning an industry.
Absolutely.
You decided to branch out on your own at that time, or did you jump to another company, or what was next?
I worked for three of the largest apartment companies in the nation, and so I got well trained in the fine details, and the caliber of the apartments that I was renting were all A+. So they were the senators, foreign ambassadors, athletes, pro athletes, and then along with that I had the Georgetown law kids, the GWU law kids, the kind of wealthy, affluent, which brought an extra level of service that was needed. There's a if you're paying that much money, so this was 2003 to 2009, say, a one bedroom might have been $1,600 a month, and a 3-bedroom could put up to $5,000, $6,000 if it was a penthouse. So if you're paying that much a month in rent, there's an extra level of service and a neediness that person might have. So the customer service issues that I had with those kind of properties had to be, it was almost kind of VIP concierge level resolutions to it.
Give me an example of that. One that maybe sticks out in your head.
The ambassador of Mexico arrived in, and his wife was 8.5 months pregnant, was about to explode with the baby. And the property I was managing was brand new. We had just opened up the penthouse level that they were renting the week that they had arrived, and something got mishooked up in construction, such that when she took her first shower, she had sewage spilling out.
That's the wrong hookup.
So that one stands out. That was, what do you even, where do you even start?
That sounds like a disaster.
Yeah.
That's way beyond a challenge.
Yeah.
Or above board service even. That's incredible.
Yeah. So that was, it was almost an international event here. Incident. Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Just understanding that you have to try and level with them. I don't understand what you're going through. That didn't happen to me. That's never happened to me. So I don't understand, but I will work to fix it with you and make it better for you. And that's what I've taken as how I want my staff to work to resolve solutions. We don't understand. And it isn't our job to understand. It's just our job to catch it, fix it, and try and make sure it doesn't happen again.
Nice. So that experience, specifically because when you work at a high level like that, like I said, in Manhattan, I was dealing with very high-end buildings that had significantly high expectations from the residents also, as to who was doing the hot stone massage on the internal spa that we had in the building. Was the hot tub hot enough? International incident also, it wasn't international, but we had some pipes turned around where the temperature for the pool was set for the hot tub and vice versa. Ooh. So the pool was rocking like a 125. The whole pool, lap pool.
Can you imagine the energy it took?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Yeah, so I get it, but when you operate at a luxurious level like that, it trickles all the way down.
100%.
So whether you have a luxury building or you're helping somebody manage some condos.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about, before we transition into how that transfers over, let's talk about how Blackwell happened. Like, what was the transition there? Why did you decide to jump out on your own? Did you do it like how you came to America? Like, well, I got no money, I'm just take a whack at it. Or did you actually have a business plan and sought out education, or how'd it go?
So, education, definitely not. I finished the Irish equivalent of high school, secondary school. And I was a competent student, B's. I never studied, hated studying, was great at sports, was captain of the sports teams at home. That's not the same as being the quarterback in high school or anything like that. There's no flair attached to it. You're just good at sports. So I always preferred to be out rather than being in studying. I like reading, but studying is different to reading for me in a big way there. I had no interest in going to college. My parents were, I was the first through of 4 kids. My mum left school when she was 11 to work on her farm. My dad left school at 13. He went deaf when he was about 8 and struggled through the years after going deaf. So he was out of school by 13. I was the first one through. Ireland was a third world country at the time. The dream was college. My parents felt that success was a college degree because it would mean that I wasn't doing some trade like my dad was forced to do. I had to have a hard chat with them. I was like, I'm not your college kid. I think I need to do something else. When I was 16, my dad, for the second time, got offered a partnership in the company he worked for. He worked for them for 25 or 30 years. And twice during his career, he was asked to go into partnership with the owner. That's how good he was at his job. And when I was 16, it happened the second time. So I would have had about a year and a half left in school at that point. And I remember asking him, I was like, Dad, I'll leave school and I'll do the phone side. I'll answer the phone and I'll be in the meetings with you. We can make that work. And he actually considered it for a day. And he came back and he said, you're finishing school. We didn't finish school. We want you to go to college. So I knew he really considered it because I think he did see that he had the potential to do it were he not deaf. But it was in that moment at 16 years old, so I was like, that's it. I'm going to be a business owner. And it was just instant. So when I came over here, that wasn't really a goal. The goal was just to travel around and have the adventure. But after getting into the property management and realising I was good at it, naturally good at it, best leasing agent, best property manager in the business that I worked with, annual awards for that kind of stuff. When I hit that level of regional property manager, I realised that the bureaucracy was slowing me down too much. And that's where my thoughts were, hang on a minute, I can do this better if I do it by myself, because if I'd send an idea to headquarters, it might take 2 months to come back, and sometimes it'd be a no. But I knew sending the ideas, like, if we do this, we're going to streamline it, it's going to work easier. I had met a Charlestown girl along the way, moved out here in 2006, so 3 years after I got here. Had been commuting back into Georgetown, and that was weighing on me. So
I did the same commute to Roslyn.
Okay, yeah. So I was 24th and M is where I was going every day. So that had begun to weigh on me. I had gotten my real estate license along the way in West Virginia just to have it as backup, because a lot of my tenants in DC were these young GWU or Georgetown law kids, and they'd try and challenge my lease. So I said, you know what, I'm going to get my real estate license just to give myself the extra depth on the contract knowledge.
Because they were learning law, they want to mess with you?
Yes.
Oh my God.
I'm not signing this, I want to scratch this out.
Right.
So that kind of stuff. So I did get my real estate license in West Virginia in 2008 or so. Never wanting to be a realtor, just to kind of pad my knowledge of property management and assist myself in that way. So a combination of the long commute, running into the kind of large company problems and being kind of at the height that I could get to at that time, and bureaucracy starting to frustrate me. I saw what I thought was a gap in the market here for property management. It looked like there was one or two old men that had been doing it for many years. And I had kind of young hunger. The American dream ideas definitely kicked in. The kind of the foreigner coming over and building something from nothing. So that became a driver. Wanting to do what my dad couldn't was a driver. And genuinely loving property management. The property management is the red-headed stepchild of real estate. It is dramatic. It can be ugly. It can be stressful. We're dealing with, you're in someone's life every day.
Right.
But I absolutely loved it.
Okay. I think about that because I took a similar path in 2010, 2011. I had moved up in that company that I was working for. Well, after I was in New York City, I came back down to D.C., got a great job with Gold's Gym.
Yeah.
Did really well in Arlington, and then that same company from D.C. in New York City, expanded back into D.C. So I picked up 2 properties with them, and I was part of helping them get those amenity management contracts. Wasn't going as awesome as they had hoped, but I was a top producer in their company.
Mm-hmm.
And the CEO decided they wanted to branch outside of my scope, even though I was handling the train department and the swim lessons and the water aerobics, and I was creating income flow for them that was above and beyond.
Mm-hmm.
Then they wanted to offer cupcake parties and wine tastings and a tapas night. And I was like, I know Kevin Brackens, and that's probably not my jam. Like, I'm probably not on the... But I was successful enough that I didn't realize it, but I was telling my CEO no for the whole DC region.
Yeah.
So inevitably it was a witch hunt, which then opened the opportunity for me to talk to my father about working with his painting company, which that's another podcast, but basically it ended up me starting my own painting company. But the idea of all that coming around to this point, the idea of looking at Charlestown or Jefferson County and saying, well, I could take a stab here, but when you're coming from Arlington or Northern Virginia, it is so drastically smaller, so smaller. And I actually think that in Arlington or Alexandria, and I certainly wouldn't be working in D.C., that was just across the river was just too much more to handle, but I think that you can't really make a dent. You can have a successful business, but it's hard to make a dent. But out here, and when I first met you was on Charlestown Now.
Yeah, that's right.
And people were making an effort to move the needle, and I realized out here you could move the needle. In a smaller community, you can move the needle. You can kind of control the flow of your success if you work hard enough. So I can kind of see it, but did you have any concerns about, besides there being kind of a shortage of young property managers? Like, did you have concerns about why not Ashburn or somewhere bigger?
I moved out here because, this is back in 2006 or whatever it was, because I felt like Charlestown could possibly be the next Frederick or Leesburg. And when I got out here, I realized there was a handful of others, not many, but there was other people about my age, kind of early 30s-ish, going into DC. And then I realized that there were a lot of older people that had been going in by the train or whatever for years before that. But I had been asked if I would manage a property out in Leesburg, and I had said no to it because it was a garden style versus a high rise. That was just I rated the more urban style of the apartments that I was dealing with. But when I considered it, I started to look at the comps, and there was a lot of new, smaller developers building those kind of apartments in Leesburg already. So they had a jump start on me. And I decided that, 20 miles further northwest or whatever, it would be an easier pond to make a bigger splash in.
That's
exactly why I did it.
Yeah, awesome. That makes sense. So, year 1, year 2, Blackwell. What's up with the name Blackwell? Is there a special meaning behind that?
My son is named after his two granddads. My dad's name is Liam. His granddad's name was James Blackwell.
That's great.
I thought it was a beautiful, strong sounding name.
Yeah, it is. It's a great name.
And it's unique.
Yeah, and your color, this is an older logo, but...
yeah, this is the original from 2011.
Yeah, the new logo has black in it, and I really like those black accents, especially here in the office, too.
Thank you.
Year 1, year 2, how did it take off?
I'm sure you can relate. I think being a business owner or being an entrepreneurially minded, we're a different breed. I think I had already made a similar leap once in coming here, so the idea of leaping into something spontaneously and kind of high risk wasn't as daunting as it was the first time around. So in a way, coming here prepared me for it. And the other thing that I really learned in leaving when I did, leaving Ireland when I did, was because it was so sudden, because it was a job promotion on a Friday and buying a one-way ticket 2 days later. So my gut said, now, if you take this promotion, you're going to blink, you're going to be 60, you're going to wonder what the hell you did with your life. So there was that gut moment that I felt, and when it came to pulling the trigger and opening Blackwell, it was the exact same feeling, and I recognise it.
That's awesome.
It was a guttural instinct.
Okay.
So, did I have a business plan? No. Did I have any idea what a business plan was? No.
No.
Did I know what property management was? Absolutely. And I had worked in it for 2003 to 8 years. So I had what I felt was at least mileage to warrant being able to give it a try. And that was enough for me.
We all remember our first sale. We all remember our first, what we closed first.
Yeah.
Or maybe there's a small one first, but then the next one really made the paycheck happen.
Yeah.
It made the business in. Was it luck? Was it a targeted person or a building? Or how did that all transpire?
I rented a very small little office space on Washington Street, put a sign in the window, and started showing up every day. And went to a couple of Chamber of Commerce meetings and whatever other things I could get. Having my real estate license helped, actually, because there was that connection to the Eastern Panhandle Board of Realtors and a few other things. So I was able to say, hey, I'm doing property management. So the first, probably 20 or 30 would have been, give this guy a try.
Yeah.
And that was kind of how I lived, like frightened the shite out of my wife at the time because she was not entrepreneurially minded. My wife right now is not entrepreneurially minded.
Two different wives?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Divorced in 2012. 2011. But
that's a whole other podcast.
We could go
how our wives or how our significant others support us when we are clinically addicted to trying to survive our business. That's an entirely different podcast, and that's probably a good one to have one day.
And I don't know what percentage of me being a business owner to attribute to the end of marriage one, but it was sizable.
I can imagine.
There's a stress that you're always living with.
Yeah, Jenny Brackens is a shout out to you, baby. Jenny.
Hi, Jenny.
Is man, she supported me out of the gate. She believed in me. She could see that I believed in myself. And one of the things that allowed me to be successful is that she had a legitimate career. And if something faltered, if I couldn't make a payment on something, or maybe she covered my portion of the bills for a few months. It's like, okay, let's make this happen because any job I did, I had to use the money made to buy more ladders or to buy more something else to build the infrastructure. I grew mine very much grassroots, which sounds like you did too.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, wives are important, and that's another podcast. I'll talk to you, Jenny. You'll be one of my primary interviewers or interviewees. All right, good. So people gave you a shot. you knew what you were doing, so you probably over-delivered. You were like, check this out. And then kind of like the rest is history?
Yeah, pretty much. I think the biggest difference that I think I brought at the very beginning was technology. I'd been using management software, very, very robust management software for what I was doing in DC. And even today, 10 years into being an entrepreneur, I still don't need that level of software. But the software that we use is equipped to be able to handle that when eventually I do get to a similar size, which I do want to get to.
When did you hire your first employee?
About 150 doors. So I waited much longer than we needed to.
So you were out there by yourself grinding. If there was an issue to show up, boom, you got to show something, it was you.
Yep. Phone ringing all hours of the night for emergencies or whatever going on.
I didn't think of that.
And that was probably the biggest stressor when you're talking about wives and stuff like that. The phone ringing at 3 o'clock in the morning because someone's got a flood.
Right.
Those are the ones that kind of wore it down. And to Jen, my current wife's ever-loving credit, and if actually, so she's military. She's 14 years in the Air Force or whatever, so she's so used to things being checklisted and by rote and done a certain way. But so she would often say, I've got no idea what you're doing. I don't know how you do it, but you're doing it well. So let's just keep at it, kind of thing.
Nice. So your first employee, what was that position?
Just an office help, and someone to answer the emergency phone calls.
Nice. I'm jumping around, but I'm excited in this conversation.
Yeah, let's go.
Being new to the country.
Yes.
New to opening a business in this country.
Yes.
How did you know how to figure out taxes and bookkeeping and stuff like that?
I didn't.
Right.
I didn't. So
same answer everybody gives me.
One of the most valuable things that I've invested in. This is one of the things we spoke about before we recorded. One of the most valuable things I've done is been working with a business coach for the last 5 or 6 years. And he would often use an expression called ignorance tax. So the biggest tax that you pay isn't to the federal government. It's to the other people that you make the mistakes as a business owner on. The stuff that you just didn't know. And you don't know until you know. And
listen to that, people. You literally don't know what you don't know until you know.
Yeah.
And that last ignorance tax I paid was $33,000.
33,000?
Can you even?
I've been there. Yes. And
well, I wish there was a system that held your hand a little more when you're opening a business. And granted, we always have our heads down and we're grinding and we're running as hard as we can, and then you slide things to the back burner and this and that, and it doesn't matter until it matters. And you heard something about sales tax, but I didn't look into it. So here I am, 6 years of not paying sales tax. Crushed me.
Yep.
Once I got made aware. And I wasn't trying to scam anybody. I roll. But that's definitely something I like to ask people is, what did you not know? And you don't know what you didn't know.
Nope.
Yeah.
And there's been so many points where you're running at a sprint. You feel like everything's going, momentum's behind you, the business is growing, economy's cooperating, the employees are all the right people in the right seats at the time, and then you hit another wall. And it's another one of those moments like, oh, fuck. I thought I had this figured out.
And you don't see that wall until almost last minute.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Until you're smack into it. So then you're pivoting. I think COVID is probably a very good example of that. Jesus, we were booming, having some great years.
Let's talk about that in a sec. Let's
Okay.
talk about that in a sec.
Yeah.
Let's get, like, pivoting on COVID is kind of one of the things I really want to talk about. But
I'm always bored talking about it, but I think we have to.
yeah, definitely. Well, it shows a resilience of a company.
Yeah.
It shows you didn't fold. You didn't just close your doors. You didn't just wait it out, and you can't because people live in these houses that you're managing for them. But so before we go into that, let's talk about what services does Blackwell offer, and what really is property management. I mean, we got to assume that you're talking on a 101 level, or even a 99 level, where it's not even a course. You're like, well, let's really break down what it is from. You have to assume I know nothing because everybody in a conversation can just sit here and nod their head like, oh, I know what you're saying.
Right.
I know what you mean. But you don't. Like, so tell me, what does a property manager do? What kind of services does Blackwell offer? And then ultimately, what is the ideal client? How do you know if you're the right client for Blackwell?
So at its most simple, we look for homeowners that are either investors or not ready or willing to sell the house that they own for whatever reason at that time. And then we take over responsibility for the house, find a tenant, put a well-qualified tenant into the house, construct and sign the lease.
Let's define well-qualified.
Okay. It's actually one of the things that makes us stand out within the industry is the well-qualified. So
I agree.
We insist that our tenants earn at least 3 times the monthly rent. We check credit, criminal, background. We check the national registries. We will go as far as confirming that the address that they've given on their application is actually attributed to them. So sometimes the address they give might be different from the address on their driver's license. So we'll always have a copy of the driver's license, and we'll cross-check to make sure that they aren't just putting a friend's address down.
Why is that important?
Because a lot of people move into rentals when they're in a bind. So if they're in a hurry to get in somewhere, they're usually running from somewhere else. Particularly during years like 2020, where you might have fallen behind on rent and you're about to get kicked out and you just need somewhere to get quickly. You'll put whatever you need to put on the application to get by, hoping that the person you're dealing with is as desperate for the money coming in. We will stop and verify that they are who they say they are. They're living where they say they're living. And if there's a mismatch in that kind of a detail, we'll decline them.
I like that, Patrick. And Jenny and I were your customer for maybe 1 or 2 years.
2 years, I think.
Over the course of 3 years. One of those years, my foreman rented from us. So it was like, that was easy to work with. And he was the guy that fixed everything if something went down anyways.
Yeah, it's handy.
Yeah. So that was one really great thing about my experience working with Blackwell is that I knew you were kind of vetting that we were getting the right tenant. And that peace of mind is substantial unless you don't know that it's a problem. And that's one of those things, not knowing what you don't know. But I knew that ahead of time because I kind of heard that pitch from you in the past. All right, cool. So that's what qualified means.
Yes.
Nice.
For Blackwell standards.
Yes.
Once they're in the property with a signed lease, we accept and process rent. We handle any of their maintenance issues and concerns. We renew leases. We do regular walkthroughs of the property to make sure that's being lived and inhabited up to a proper standard.
That's also, look, man, if that's unique to Blackwell, I need you to really say that on the microphone. Because I feel like walking the properties is crucial for catching.
I think actually walking the properties versus saying that you might do it would be one of the differentiators. And in doing so, it allows us to catch people violating leases that we may not otherwise have ever caught.
Would an example be having 2 families in when there's only supposed to be 1?
More people in the house.
Right.
More pets or a pet if they've said there's no pets, that kind of a thing. And I've had enough experience in the industry to train my maintenance people to be looking out for that.
Yeah.
Look, if you're going in to fix a garbage disposal, just keep an eye out. Is there pet food bowls hanging about? Is there dander or hair, more hair than you would usually see in a house? That kind of a clue, so that if we get that kind of report from a maintenance vendor for us, that would be enough for us to then say, hey, we're going to just come in and check it out and have a look around.
So to some extent, because I think you can, I guess, interpret a relationship with a property manager as it could be cantankerous, it could be challenging, because you just need to find somebody to get in. I'm not saying you. I'm saying a property manager's like, I just got to get somebody in there, get the rent flowing. I'll bend some rules just to make sure that the homeowner's happy, they're getting their rent check. I'm making my money. I've got somebody in there. If there's a problem 8 months down the road, 3 months down the road, I'll figure that out later. And I think that a lot of customers think that, just like they think all painters are the same, they think that all property managers are the same. And I've heard, as a painter, I go into houses that are demolished.
Yeah.
And we have to get them up and ready either for rent or for sale. And I'm like, what manager were you using that wasn't seeing these problems? And if I'm paying somebody, the kind of services you're describing are what I'm hoping to expect.
And so I think that's one of the things that I wish I had more control over, because, so let me give you another career example. So another penthouse apartment in DC was being rented by an NBA player. He would get boxes of, I think it was Adidas stuff every day, boxes full of runners or shorts, whatever. When that person moved out of his apartment, it was the most disgusting, horde-filled, cockroach-infested mess I've ever seen. And it might be the worst property that I've ever walked into. An NBA professional or getting paid however much he's getting paid. So, on paper, you might have a perfect credit score, and you might be making 150 grand. But if you come from a life where you weren't taught how to live cleanly, or whatever it is that results in that, just not caring what you're leaving behind, we can't police that or prevent that. So I minimize the risk as much as I possibly can.
Right, so you intercept that by, like you said, having your maintenance guys keep an eye out.
Yeah.
And by coordinating the occasional walkthrough, or a friend of mine was managing his own. I said, look, man, make it mandatory that quarterly you personally, just a part of the price of your rent, just so you know, we come in and we change your AC unit filters for you.
Yep.
And you can go in there and you can kind of eyeball around. I got to take the one upstairs too.
So that's one of the things that we've added in the last couple of years is the filters get delivered to every house that we manage once every 2 months.
Super smart.
It's a service to the tenant. Our residents feel kind of better looked after because something Blackwell labelled is arriving to their house every 2 months saying, here, change them. But it protects our owners at the same time because it'll extend the life of the HVAC unit, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, definitely. So, all right, cool. So I kind of interrupted you in the middle of you describing the services that you offer. One being the qualified tenant, and then elaborate some more. What did we miss? I interrupt a lot, so I apologize, okay. But that's how it goes.
I think where we make our money is the maintenance response. Having somebody picking up a phone at 2:00 on Christmas morning because a pipe burst, or something of similar magnitude that completely upsets the life of the people involved, both our homeowner and our tenant. And it's not always an easy position to be in, being that middleman, where we represent the homeowner. We're there to protect that person's house. That's an asset to the homeowner. We want that to function as positively as we possibly can. At the same time, we have a person in that house that considers his home. So striking the balance where we are making sure that the tenant is taken care of without kind of putting our owner in a negative position can get a little bit tenuous, and knowing how to handle that balance and making sure that everybody is taken care of properly while our client is still being best represented is an art.
I agree. We had some challenges with our property. One was a leak, which it happens. That's no problem, and we got that fixed.
Yeah, yours was the bay window, wasn't it?
It was a bay window. Yeah, the bay window, and
that's right.
It was dripping.
Yeah.
And the at that time, the client or the tenant was they wanted to move into hotels. They thought the place was full of mold because of an overnight leak. And that wasn't the case, but we got in there and got it fixed and good to go. But their concern, because they would call about anything and everything. And I feel like a lot of tenants just want to get that security deposit back. I got to make sure this house is good to go. I need to get my security deposit back so I can put it in the next place we're moving to. But it was almost, to me, crazy because, A, I get a call from you guys, and you guys are super calm. The voice was just like, we have a challenge. Here's what it is. I'm letting you know. Should we go ahead and get the guy out there to fix it or blah, 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 blah. And the process with you guys was, in my mind, not even worth mentioning, but it was so good, it wasn't challenging. It was like, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. Go ahead and have him fix it or whatever. Or I said, you know what, let me get my guy over there. We'll take a look at it, and if it's something that my handyman could fix, we'll go ahead and fix it. Like we had the evaporator or whatever on the AC unit got stopped up and wasn't sending the water out, so then it made the machine stop running or something stupid like that. And it was easy. I took some parts apart. I fixed that one. I was the handyman on that one. But I know you guys have people on staff, but the opposite side, me and my wife became frustrated because we then had our second client that was in there, and she was so nervous that she wasn't going to get her security deposit back that she reported the tiniest little things, and my wife's like, what are we doing here? Stop. Like this, it was almost like, it was crazy. At one point, she was putting food in the crisper of the refrigerator.
Okay.
And she was doing it too much, and it was freezing some of her vegetables.
Yeah.
And she was calling asking for a new fridge. And I remember saying to the young lady who handled it, I think she's out front there, I said, so you're telling me the fridge is doing too good of a job? And she's like, well, yeah, but if it's affecting her... I said, yeah, I get it. But the fridge is working.
Yep.
So we had headaches that weren't really headaches. I guess they were concerns. But as an owner, we think it's going to be a headache. Mm-hmm. And we don't know what you're saying to them, right? Because we don't know as new renters, owners, we're renting it out, we don't know if we're supposed to buy them a new fridge because they asked for it. We don't know if we're supposed to, how fast we need to get somebody over there for something. But you guys really handled it well without pushing us, but at the same time letting us know whether it's urgent or not. And I think those lines of communication are something you should mention, especially with the portal, on what that does for you, but how important having communication is versus another property manager that may not even get a hold of you when something goes wrong, or all of a sudden you just get a bill. Mm-hmm. The thing is if you don't compare how great you guys are with another outfit who might not be, or another example, then we can't really see how much Blackwell shines.
Okay. I do want to touch on one thing that I think is important, and I apply it in business as well as here now, and that is the difference between fact and emotion. And a lot of what we receive are emotional phone calls, people calling upset, stressed out, something is wrong, and they need help. So they're in an emotional state. And training a team to catch that, but then pull out the facts. Leave the emotion away, because the emotion leads to bad decisions. But just pull out the facts. And then identifying those facts and then communicating those facts to our owner. So we are stripping the emotion out of it, which I'm glad to hear in your first-hand experience that's coming across as calm, because that's what we're trying to do. We don't want to be like, hey, your house is flooding, we can't find the off valve, it's going to be a total mess. That's emotion, right?
We expect you. If you're calling about something that I want to panic about, I expect you to be panicked as well. But you guys aren't.
No, the worst thing we could do is panic with you. Because then it's just going to snowball and get worse and worse and worse.
Right, but that's how I'd expect. I'm like, they're not even fired up about this. This must be routine to them.
Yeah.
They're just used to this.
So one of the little things that we're developing in-house right now is a label system that we want to get into all of our houses that identifies little things. Main water valve, gas shut off, those kind of things that when you're in a panic, calling your property manager saying I've got an emergency, you're not thinking straight. Even just being able to say, hey, okay, go downstairs, open that door. There's going to be a Blackwell label that says water main. Switch it. Problems stopped, not fixed,
Stopped,
but
yeah.
problems stopped, and then go from there. But that ties into, I think I'm continuing to educate our tenants on levels of work orders now, because you mentioned the portals, which is the technology side of it, right? So a lot of our tenants place work orders over the portal, and some of them are placing emergency work orders over the portal, which is not an ideal use of technology. If it's an emergency, we want to hear about it. Call us, speak to a human, relay exactly what's going on, because if you're using the technology side of it, it may be not 24 hours, but it might be 8 o'clock at night when you put in the work order, and we'll read it again at 9 o'clock the next morning.
Right.
But portals have been a godsend for us. It allows our tenants to pay rent, to place work orders, to get communicated with.
So tenants can pay online?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Absolutely. Placing their work orders online and then track the process, so that they'll get pinged when the maintenance guy is getting dispatched. There'll be a summary of what happened. So if it's not closed because there's a part being ordered, they're updated live. And the same on our owner's side. Our owners get paid electronically. They can check in on their portal anytime as well. They can see if their tenant has paid rent. They can see any open work orders, the history of their work orders, pull their monthly statements, pull their annual tax statement for their accountant, all of that. And I think initially, people have a fear of technology initially, and I think people being humans were afraid that technology would take over. You think of Zillow, Zillow was, the biggest fear was that realtors were going to be defunct because of Zillow. I think property managers are a perfect example of why the human contact is actually necessary. So we can work with technology, but I don't want to remove that human factor. I want you to talk on the phone. I want to talk on the phone with you or in person if there's something to talk about, because technology can delay in places and anonymize it too much.
I agree. So are these sort of portals being used by other companies in the area, or is it something that's unique to you guys?
I can think of one other that's using it. That'd be about it.
Okay.
So I'm surprised how many people are still using Excel spreadsheets. Let's just say that.
Okay. So then these additional services, the higher quality of services that you're providing, you can't be more expensive than the next guy, but you're over delivering for the same price.
Yeah. And I've taken it as a compliment. I think we've grown to the point where we're comfortably the largest at what we do in our region. Our region being the Eastern Panhandle for certain. Like twice or triple the size of our nearest competitor.
Wow,
we're
great.
large.
Nice.
And what my sales team has started to notice is we're being undercut.
Of course.
So I think we're probably the person that they're going up against most often, and they might drop a rate to try and get
out what your rate is, or they know what the industry standard is, and they're like, well, we'll give you the bargain version of what they do.
So that's what we've been coping with the last kind of year or so. But
because of COVID or not because of COVID?
No, not because of COVID.
Okay.
Natural growth. Segueing into COVID there just a little bit, so in 2019 I did my first acquisition. I bought my then largest competitor, and we closed in March 2019. That was a man that wanted to retire. He had an identically sized company based out of Berkeley County as what I had in Jefferson County.
Wow.
So I doubled my business in that move, and it gave Blackwell the entire Eastern Panhandle territory. And then in the end of December 2019, I acquired a smaller business in Manassas, Virginia. So the remainder of 2019 from March was kind of growing our West Virginia footprint. But then this Manassas opportunity appeared out of nowhere, wasn't looking, was in the middle of making the West Virginia acquisition work. The price worked, the type of properties that the lady had was similar. And I was like, oh,
that's entirely another podcast.
It's another one of those.
Buying a business is...
Yeah, and I've bought two.
I know, I don't understand. And you seem like the kind of guy who's just going to figure it out.
That was one of those moments. It was another gut moment. I check my gut more than... I don't know if people even know what a gut feeling is sometimes.
I know what it is.
Because if I say I just went with my gut, they're like, oh, that sounds crazy.
That does. Well, I just have zero experience with buying businesses. I've seen people who've done it. I understand sometimes it's asset acquisition. Sometimes it's customer acquisition. You're buying the customers, which is, it seems really smart to me, but they're real ballsy moves. Real ballsy moves. Because you took a risk opening a business. And sure, the business can be successful by definition, but there's always growth. There's always ways to get more streamlined, and then to take your eyes off the prize of being streamlined, efficient, successful on your lane. You're like, oh, there's another lane that's going my way. I'm gonna jump over there and just take that on. Then again, I opened that Virginia office, and that was gangbusters also. But we got overwhelmed by lack of staff. We really couldn't find anybody to hire, which was kind of crazy. Then COVID hit.
We can talk about staff and all you want as well. That's yeah. Oh, so
we'll be here for days, man.
To jump back on that just for a minute, right?
Yeah.
So I had closed on acquisition number 1, which was 2.5 years in the works. That was
okay.
I knew that this man was a competitor. If I was meeting a potential client, I was often hearing his name, and it was between us. And if I was winning it, I was winning it over him, and if I was losing it, I was losing it to him. And I knew he was older, so I emailed him one day. I was like, "Hey, we're doing exactly the same thing. We should have lunch." So that turned into like a 3-hour chat, in Applebee's in Martinsburg, I think it was. And at the end of that lunch, he said, "I've been thinking of ways to retire, and I might have just found it." So it was just...
That's amazing.
The acquisition wasn't really the plan there at all. It was, hey, let's talk shop. You're doing the exact same thing. I respect you because you're my biggest competitor. Let's just chat.
Yeah.
Let's nerd out about the industry for a while. And that was very fortuitous. And when he said that, I was like, look, this isn't what I was looking for. Genuinely, if you're serious, I'd love to talk. And then we had lunch regularly for 2 years. He wanted to make sure I was who he thought I was. He wanted to make sure I'd take care of his company after he left, etc. And his key employee, who is now one of our best employees, one of the best lines.
Awesome.
And then in December, fell into this Manassas deal. Had the systems from the first acquisition, knew what I wanted to do for acquisition 2, and then COVID. And everything just... So then I had opened a new state. I was 8 weeks into having a new footprint, and then the world shut down. And that was one of the most terrifying periods.
Yeah. So much I don't know about that. So let's talk about that. So we just covered kind of growth, but let's go back to some numbers. So
yeah,
before the guy you've been meeting with for 2 years,
yeah,
approximately how many properties were you managing?
170.
So then you pretty much doubled to 340-ish.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty insane. Mm-hmm. And all he had was one employee?
Yeah.
And at the time, you probably had 5 or 6?
He had one employee but no systems.
No systems.
He was everything.
Wow, okay. It was all in his head too, probably.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, brutal.
So I was able to take all of that and say, right, I've got the systems and the people. So I'll keep your lady, and the technology we used, it was just data entry. It was like...
Okay, and then the Manassas, how many properties did that increase your portfolio by?
Another 100.
Another 100?
Yes.
Wow, that's...
I know, that was very fast growth.
That's to me, that seems like a lot of properties for an Eastern Panhandle company. So like now you're borderline just the most dominant in the area, no matter what, and not including Manassas even.
Yeah. Yeah, so certainly in the Eastern Panhandle, 450 or whatever we've got in West Virginia, I'd say you'd have to get to Morgantown before you'd see someone bigger than us in West Virginia.
Wow.
When you think about Northern Virginia, At 100, we're a small fish.
Right.
We want to be 10 times that to be considered large in Northern Virginia.
Okay.
Which we will.
Yeah, in time.
We'll get there.
Congrats on that, man. That is a maybe something you visualized years ago, or maybe it's just what's happened, and you've been smart enough to have the systems, to believe in the portals. You believe probably in the training of your people to be a certain way, because you learned that working with the luxury buildings and things like that. These are all pieces that, to me, came together for you, luckily. You know, like, because it seems like you're gambling a little bit.
Yeah.
And you're just kind of winging it. Maybe we all do that. I just don't see it. But that's amazing, man.
So pre-COVID, I would travel about twice a quarter to industry conferences or business owning mastermind type conferences, and I would come back from these things just full to the gill with new ideas. And my staff got to the point where they called me, they sat down with me and said, listen, we know you're coming back with some good stuff, but can you schedule when you release the information? Because right now you're coming back and you're just like emptying a bucket on us, and the whole business is changing in so many ways all at once, and it was freaking them out. So I'm comfortable. I was like, yeah, we'll figure it out. And they were like, no, we can't figure it out. We need a plan. Slow it down and let us figure it out. So I learned to take more notes about when and how I can relay it to my team.
A rollout, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I want to talk about those masterminds. I saw some of those things on the receptionist desks, and I've always had an interest in that. But before we get to that, I want to hit the COVID thing.
Okay.
So I know how COVID has affected painting, and I'm getting ready to do a podcast about that. Pretty stoked about it. I'm going to do a Q&A with somebody's going to interview me, which I'm pretty cool. But I'm happy about. But how did it impact the industry, and then how did it impact you guys, and then how did you push through that?
Because of where we're located. Because of where we're located, the proximity to DC. I think we're not a suburb yet. We're definitely still an exurb, but we're definitely filled with the people.
We're an outpost
that filled that DC. Yes, exactly. So we didn't feel it as bad as the horror stories you've read about nationally. Our delinquency each month, which is our total unpaid rent at the end of any given month, our total unpaid rent sits around 1% on a usual basis. So in West Virginia, about 4 houses may pay their rent late, and in most cases, within a couple of weeks of that, they'll all have paid. They pay late for whatever reason, but we don't have to evict them. At our peak in about July of 2020 with COVID, we got up to about 10%, which is astronomical for us, but didn't jeopardize the company or our owners. And we worked with the tenants. I think one of the here's another little thing, right? So I think a lot of property managers nationally see tenants as a second-class citizen. It's an us versus them. So when it comes to referring to their tenants, it's always a they did this, or they screwed up, or they whatever. When COVID hit, I emailed all of my owners, and I said, I'm going to handle this as fairly as I can. And I feel like if I approach our tenants with hey, if you let us know what's going on, just talk to us. If you're going to pay rent late, tell us. How late are you going to pay rent? Can you pay rent? If you can't pay rent, talk to us. And that was very well received by our tenants when that went out, because they were hearing of their friends or their acquaintances getting these threatening letters and get out kind of things that got everybody rallied. We didn't have any of that. So we have not lost any tenants to unpaid rent due to COVID, which I'm really proud of.
You should be.
And we don't have more. I think we might have 2 across the 2 states on payment plans catching up. and they pay when they say they will.
That's great.
Because we worked with them.
Right.
So there was just having a little bit of empathy for the situation and realizing that I think being a small business probably helped because I was able to say, look, I'm affected by this. We're affected by this. We're in the same boat as you. We'll do whatever we can. And thankfully, we got zero pushback from our owners. In fact, some of our owners were like, well, I'd be willing to forego rent for 3 months. So we had to go back to our owners and go, well, we don't want that.
Right.
That's wonderful of you to offer, but if we can avoid that, let's keep your money coming in. So there were some interesting kind of reverse conversations that I didn't expect to have.
Well, having that empathy, of course, is key, and it's probably not something a lot of people have thought about. But I think also tying back to what you said earlier, you vet the qualifications of somebody to be.
It really helped us.
Yeah, that the level of character that you are inviting in to be a tenant in your client's house or apartment, I think, is really helps you on that piece.
Yeah, absolutely.
Real. Yeah.
What the other startling realization was just how little of an impact it had in Northern Virginia.
What do you mean?
COVID. Our delinquency at any month end in Virginia might be 0.5 to 3/4%.
Okay.
And it didn't even jump. Everybody paid.
They kept working.
Yep.
And they were all probably working remotely, so their paychecks never really stumbled.
Yep.
But again, because you make sure that they have the right income and a little bit of background check, that legwork on the front end is really helping you, I think. That's got to be it.
Yeah, it's funny. You could get complacent with it because it's just so natural a system for us now. But having seen and heard of the delinquency numbers, 35, 40% for some other property management companies.
That's insane.
I was like, okay.
Yeah.
This front end stuff, we can't take it for granted here because that is really, it's our first line of defense is saying no to someone that wouldn't qualify or shouldn't qualify.
What were some of the challenges, though, that you had from COVID?
12 employees pivoting to remote work was massive. We have a young mother who with needed daycare coverage got to the point where she felt she needed to be in the office to actually work because it was too busy at home and the kid and the homeschooling. So there was a lot of learning how to pivot and change how we worked every day without being face-to-face or being able to talk on the fly like we usually would. Making sure that everybody had the internet connections and the video monitors or the video cameras and the small details that you'd hadn't even considered
Because
as necessary.
New.
Totally new. One of the things I'm proudest of within Blackwell is the culture. After I acquired my first competitor, I promised them that if they hit their goals for the rest of the year, I'd take them somewhere. And I'd been expecting them to say Vegas or San Francisco or something for a weekend. And they came to me and asked me if I'd take them to Dublin.
Wow.
So I said, look, if you hit your goals and you want me to show you around my hometown, fucking go for it then. Absolutely. So I took my 4 key employees to Dublin in January of last year, 2 months before the lockdown. I invest in the team feel, the camaraderie, the intercooperation. We're totally allowed to have a drink in the afternoon here at our desk. Just a kind of a work hard but play hard at the same time.
I totally condone the occasional drink, for real.
So the culture that all has of working together. I was in the middle of trying to convert that culture to another state when we got locked down at the front end of just converting that. So that was non-existent. I felt like that was kind of flapping in the breeze. And then by probably June, I felt like it was feeling a bit more normal. We'd figured it out. We were able to, our phones are VoIP.
Yeah.
So as long as you have a modem you can plug into at home, they were able to just plug their phones in. So there was no break in service, but morale dropped significantly. For 4 of them, it was 2 months after they'd just gotten back from a trip from Ireland. So they were like at the peak of their work experience and energy. So it got sapped away quick. Keeping spirits up, mentally, I mean. Trying to lead a team. I'm at my happiest when I'm leading.
Yeah.
And I lead by example and through experience. And I didn't have a fucking clue what was going on.
Right.
I was at home with 2 twins that had come back from freshman year in college, so they had just gotten out to, one's in Colorado, the other's in WVU. They had just gotten into experimentation and drinking and partying and all that. They feel like they're coming back to prison.
Right.
My 11 at the time, he's 12 now, but 11 last year, was homeschooling. My wife was actually, she's the emergency management side of the Air Force, so she was the response. So she was actually working busier. She worked for 90 days straight at the beginning of it. So I was trying to lead, but I hadn't a clue how to handle my own life.
Well, what you did was you built culture inside of a cool office, you know, in a place that you wanted to work, in a place where people wanted to come to go to work, right?
Yes.
And then what you couldn't have seen coming was, okay, continue being the leader you are, but you can't actually physically be near the person. You can't hug it out. You can't have, like, having a tough conversation over Zoom is not the same as having that face-to-face in this conference room. You know?
Exactly. Yeah.
And if you're the kind of leader that needs to be, to feel the temperature of the room and to, you know, the way you communicate has to be in person, that's got to be super hard.
The body language.
Right.
The eye contact.
Right.
The non-verbals. Could we permanently work remotely into the future? Absolutely. Would I like to do it?
I was going to ask you that.
I'd rather
do you want everybody to come back? I would say yes.
Absolutely.
Come back.
Mm-hmm.
It's a second. You spend a lot of time at work, and if it's a good environment, people are happy being there, then they should come back.
Yeah.
You know, it's part of you optimizing the kind of leader you are. If they want the best out of you, you got to see them.
Yeah.
It's not like an oversight. In my mind, it wouldn't be an oversight thing. It's the energy, right?
Yeah.
The culture.
100%.
Nice. Anything else? We talked about successes during COVID and challenges during COVID. Is Manassas still flapping in the breeze? Or are you trying to figure out how to reel them in?
No. In about October, I started to... So I feel like we pressed pause. I wanted to have the systems integrated, our property management agreement and our leases, all that kind of stuff, properly integrated into Virginia by the end of March. It was more like the end of September, so I feel like we got a 6-month pause. But by the end of October, just before Thanksgiving, I started to really feel like I could feel the bond we had. We'd started doing monthly all-hands team meetings, and I'll take all of us from Charlestown there 1 month and bring them here another. We had 2 or 3 of them in a row, and I could feel the rapport building. I could feel the communication starting to open up. The trust was starting to develop between the team. So that was just before Thanksgiving, really. I sat back and I thought, okay, this is starting to look like what it should look like.
Well, it's a different kind of leadership altogether there. You can interview people, and you can choose to hire them or not, or try them out and see how they fit into your team. But with the first acquisition, you were just picking up one person that probably came to some of the lunches that you and the guy was having in the discussion, and was probably part of the decision-making process. Like she said, yeah, this guy's going to take care of your business. But with the Manassas, how many employees did you pick up there?
5, but I fired one immediately. Mm-hmm. So I acquired 5, but within 4 or 6 weeks, I realized that person was doing nothing.
Yeah.
So I got rid of them.
But the idea, because Manassas is close, but it's not close. I mean, it's many large towns between you
Yeah.
and them. And then they're like, who's this West Virginia outfit coming in here? He's got Irish accent. What? And then there's all that, like, probably nervousness, like, we're being bought. Are we all going to get fired?
Yeah.
All that. So you got to be a leader in that. How did you prepare yourself to meet new staff that you're adopting?
One good, lengthy team meeting, kind of a kick-off event, where I kind of introduce who I am and what Blackwell's all about, and then let them fire questions at me. And just, it doesn't have to be business.
Sure.
Like, talk, where are you from? Why are you this way? And being vulnerable in my answers and just letting them see that I'm genuine and serious about being here, and I'm going to take care of them from the beginning. The fact that I had 4 employees that were like, this guy took us to Ireland last year, really freaking helped. Really helped. I had no idea how the back end value that I got, the loyalty, the buy-in that I got from that. And I always have a kind of more European approach to holidays, vacation. You get your national holidays or the Memorial Day and Labor Day, etc., etc. I don't do Columbus. Columbus was a cheating little fucker. But anyway, all of them, and then we close for the week between, say, lunchtime Christmas Eve until the day after New Year's Day. We shut, and then the day after Thanksgiving, we do Thanksgiving the day after for Black Friday and stuff like that. So I've always been looking to be non-traditional in days off. I think the biggest difference, if someone said, what's the biggest difference between Ireland and America? I think here, you work to live. You live to work. America, you live to work.
Right.
It's all about it. Whereas at home, you work to live, and I portray the work to live here. So you're going to do me better for longer if you're spending more time away from me. So take that week at Christmas, and I'll pay you, and be with your family, and we'll see you next year. And our only rule for those kind of breaks are check your email once or twice a day and respond to emergencies, so that the client isn't being let down.
Gotcha.
That's it.
Changing the topic a little bit, are you currently hiring?
Oh, we hired 2 new property managers in November.
Okay.
And I would say that we're right where we need to be right now.
What makes a good new hire or established property manager for Blackwell? What kind of skills?
So I have a few traits that aren't skills. You have to have traveled, preferably abroad, which is hard to find in West Virginia.
Absolutely.
I think that having the realization that things can be the same but different is very valuable in how you interact with people and how you solve problems. And so it's not a skill. It's a life experience trait that you discover. So I ask in my interviews, I ask a lot of random questions about where you've traveled to. I'm famous for throwing in. I like to unsettle people as much as I possibly can. I'll ask maths questions, geography questions. Might venture in the direction of politics just to see how they react. And then I might go quick fire. What's 8 times 8? What's the capital of France? And just let them. Answering right or wrong is less important than remaining calm and answering the question. I want to. Do you know what I mean?
I understand. Yeah.
What's your favorite curse word?
Right.
That's a very telling question and insight into someone's personality. Can you curse in an interview?
Right.
Like, is that a religious thing? How conservative are you? Does that conservatism run over into other areas of your life?
Professionally, right?
So I try and I interview in a unique manner, shall we say?
How many people have to interview to find a top half property manager?
Say that again.
How many interviews do you have to schedule? Not necessarily the same person. I guess what I'm getting at is with Bracken's painting,
You're talking about the quality of the people.
It's about 1 in 40 will get hired and last longer than 10 days.
Here's the lesson that I learned in November when I hired. I upped the salary I was willing to pay by $10,000, and I went from about 1 in 12 to 1 in 4.
Great.
And it was a stretch. In the pandemic, numbers are tighter. Last year was a booming sales year for this area. So we lost 70 homeowners last year, 80 maybe, that couldn't sell for the previous 10 years because they bought at the height of the last bubble.
Right.
They've been kind of reluctant landlords in that time. They were able to get out and they all jumped. So money was the pandemic, the home sale craze that was going on. It was a risk, paying more money.
So the more homes that sold, the less clients you had, basically. So all of a sudden you had a client for 5 or 6 or 8 or 10 years.
Something like 8 or 10 years.
And that's money that you're used to and expecting, and to have 70 to 80 of them just kind of say,
"Yep,
selling, we're out."
Yep.
And you're like, well, that sucks.
Yep. So
hiring 2 people at that kind of a pay increase is a risk.
It was like 20% pay increase over what I would usually have offered, but the return has been the difference in quality. Just even from the immediate applications that were coming into my inbox.
I had the same experience. So I had like a mental breakdown in July, and I had to like just tap out. I went on the Appalachian Trail for like 8 days.
It's like a fashion craze, these mental breakdowns.
Dude, for real. Mine was legit. I was yelling at people, screaming and threatening. I was a mess, and I really tapped out for a minute. When I came back, I had a plan, and that plan immediately failed. I reflected in the woods, and the plan failed miserably, so then I had to readjust. And at one point in August or September, I think it was August, I was the only painter. For Bracken's Painting to have one painter, that's a real punch to the stomach. And I was painting this mansion by myself. And I said, okay, there's just nobody trying to work because they can stay at home. Because the pay rate that I was paying, if you made unemployment plus the $600 a week, you were like 80% of your regular paycheck anyways. So why bother coming to work? So I had a lot of guys jump out there and attempt or be successful in doing unemployment fraud. I said, all right, screw it. I'm going to increase wages, unprecedented, 25%. Come on, guys, $25 an hour. I want to see what's out there. And I went from a 1 in 40 to a 1 in 2.
Wow.
So I hired 3 guys because many people didn't apply.
Yeah.
People, for some reason, I guess they thought it was, or they didn't want to come to work anyways. The ones who applied, half of them I hired. 2 of the 3 are still around. And it's amazing the quality of work. It has totally changed. Low stress. One was a younger guy who I think was making about 14 to 16 an hour, and now he's making 20. And when you're 25 and you have 3 kids, that's a huge increase. And I don't think I've purchased his loyalty, I guess, with his wages, but he does really great work, super polite. I have a feeling he's going to go out on his own soon because he's savvy and the economy's getting better. So I know he's going to leave.
Yeah.
I'm ready for it, I guess, is the thing. And the other guy that we've kept, they're just dynamite. They do dynamite work. They're out there working right now. I have zero stress about it because they're doing so well. And I have a hard time believing that it was the pay rate that makes them do the hard work. I think they knew what they were worth, and they went for a new job, and I treat my guys with respect, so they're happy, and they're paid on time.
Is there anything that you can do to block him leaving? Because that's not something. I think the money certainly helps the loyalty buy-in in my industry, But it's the other stuff. It's the team outings that in ordinary times you can do regularly, whether it's Top Golf or wineries or.
Well, they don't want to spend time with me because I'm the boss. It's just that's the kind of industry it is.
Yeah.
It's just, and they have families. They want to go do their thing, work. It's harder work. It's physical labor, so they don't always want to spend time with me.
Yeah.
So the opportunity to have outings isn't something I've really pursued in a very long time, just based on the caliber of people we had on staff. Some of them weren't that great, and some of them terrible, and some have been really great. But right now, the 4 primary painters that I have all been painting company owners in the past. And they either folded or quit for whatever reason. Or like this young guy opened his business in December of 19. So he was just getting ramped up, just getting started, about to go into spring. And then because he has 3 kids, he didn't have that perfect push forward.
Mm-hmm.
He has this massive amount of responsibility, so it made sense for him to go find a job. Mm-hmm. So the guys that I hire are hustlers, and I encourage them to go out on their own. I help him determine how to get insurance. Mm-hmm. So I tell him the pitfalls I've had, because for me it's easier to help him go out on his own.
Yep.
So he'll come back and help me when I need muscle. But I'm not going to put myself in a position to, which I think a lot of laborers or tradesmen have been put in, no, you can't leave. Here's why you can't. Almost you push them down and you keep them down because these guys in the production they do make my living. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if I coach them instead of boss them, which sounds like a lot of what you're doing, you're coaching your staff.
Yeah, that's fair.
If I coach them, they'll realize how good it is, and they may choose not to leave. Mm-hmm. They may leave for 6 months and get their butts kicked and be like, "Brackens, you hiring, man?" And they're good, strong muscle. Mm-hmm. But I think that because each of my top producers have owned their own business, they've tasted the real money. They know what the real money is. They know how much it costs to paint this room. They know how much they got paid for the day to do it.
Yeah.
And they're like...
They have a more of an understanding of the mindset as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so right now, the last 3 jobs we've done, because these guys are super skilled, they know what finished product is. I walk in there and do my inspection as we're wrapping up the job, and I can't find anything wrong. And I got to get real picky, be like, "Hey, man, just so you know, when we're doing this sort of thing here, make sure it's like this." And they can almost tell I'm talking outside of my mouth. They're like, "Okay, Brackens, all right." Yeah, and then because they're so autonomous and so professional, I leave them alone most of the time because my presence on the job, it stresses them out. Maybe because I ask questions, maybe because I can be menacing, maybe because I'll grab a paintbrush and paint for 30 minutes and just leave a bucket there. It's a mess, and I'll go take a phone call and then leave.
Yep.
So they like it when I'm gone. And I've coached them to like it that I'm gone, and they manage each other. There's a boss there, but so
I think that's one of the lessons I learned along the way was, I think our instinct is to control, mm-hmm. and to direct, and to dictate if needed. And the first time that one of my employees had taken what was a big chance for her at the time. She was like, "Do you not have a game of golf or something you can go play? Or we don't need you here." And when I first heard it, I was like, I didn't know what to say or how to react. I was like, "What do you mean you don't need me here? It's my fucking business." Like, yeah. And then when I went home and I mentioned that to Jen, and she was like, "That's like the best compliment she could possibly have paid you."
Pretty much, right?
That means that we could go to Maui for a week for a conference which we had coming up, and she's telling me your business is fine. It's going to be fine when you come back. And then that was like, oh my God, that was a big step in the life of the business. Then the training was good, the competency was good, the systems were tight to the point where they were, "Hey, yeah, you want to go play golf?
Yeah, we've got it handled.
We got it."
Yeah. So like most of the guys that have worked for me in the past, they've worked with a contractor. Where the fact that I pay on time is like we're 300% ahead of where we were.
Yep.
the fact that the schedule's not brutal. I don't force them to work the weekends without making overtime.
Sure.
You know, I run it as super legit as possible that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
The more mature operators that I have appreciate that versus just fast work, make money, make more hours.
Yeah.
Yeah. One more thing. I want to wrap this up with the last question. I'll tell you what it is now, so you can rumble around in your head.
Okay.
Just so I don't forget it.
Yep.
I want to know what the ideal Blackwell property management client looks like. Your customer. I want you to be able to break that down so that someone listening is like, you know what? I definitely need to call Blackwell.
Okay.
I had no idea. Or I've been managing my own rental scenario. It's been a pain in my ass. I bet. So that sort of thing. So I do want to touch on that.
Yep.
But before we go there, because that's kind of the final plug
Okay.
for the logo and everything in the company. But
You know I didn't do this for a plug.
no, I know, I get it,
I
but
did this
it's
for the
important.
conversation.
No, but you wouldn't be you. No, look, dude. This is a conversation that we're recording for prosperity, and for me, these first conversations that I have with business owners like yourself, it needs to be part of a commercial. It's part of Blackwell is part of who you are. It's almost all of who you are.
Mm-hmm.
Like Brackets Painting is almost all of who I
Yep.
am. And we have to do this version of the podcast and get it out of the way, so that when I invite you in, we have 4 mics running, and we're going to talk about staff training. That's what it's about. Versus, does that make sense? So like the real juicy parts of the conversations you and I are going to have down the road,
Yeah.
we had to get this one out of the way.
Okay.
We have to know, and I want to know what property management is. I want to know what's good, what's bad, what really is an ideal client. Somewhere along the line, Patrick, you picked up a leadership style that isn't innate. You had to watch somebody, you had to hear from somebody, you had to see systems that were working, and even though you say you're not formally educated, you've got something going on that you're training people. For you to have the idea of, okay, let's go ahead and get 2 all-stars in here, or whatever it is, you had to hear that somewhere, right? So the education's there. That's what I want to know from you is, before we go to the ideal client, and before our future podcast that we have, which I think will be really content dense, I'm really stoked about. But
I'm excited to hear about it.
Right. The mastermind concepts,
Yes.
or your mentoring, or having a business coach. How do you even pick a business coach? Like, how do you? Hey, man, I know everything there is to know about painting in my mind, right? But of course, there's a lot to learn. But touch on some of those things that have been really influential for you, and that might, anybody who listens to this might, just a little light goes on and say, man, I should look into that. Like, I know I want and need a coach or a therapist or both.
Yep.
Right?
I think for most of my life, therapist was a negative word.
Mm-hmm.
I come from a very, the Irish culture would be one of stoicism, of strong, humble men that don't talk about their feelings.
No
and
emotions,
all,
no way.
all that.
Yeah.
The more that the way that I've educated myself as a business owner is, I'm humble. I'm probably too humble in a lot of ways. But I know I'm an expert in property management. I know what I'm talking about. I geek out about the stuff. I've been doing it for nearly 20 years now. There's not much that I haven't seen in this industry. Now, it's the kind of industry that you'll say that, and then you'll see some weird fucker do something crazy, and it always happens. But the concepts, I know about as much as you can possibly know, and I read up on it, and I stay ahead of it. What I was smart enough to know at the beginning was I could be as expert in an industry as I can be, but I knew nothing about business ownership, or business strategy, or goal planning, or goal setting, and I just went and I read stuff. So I read about 3 or 4 books a month, 3 of which, if I read 4 a month, 3 of them will be business, self-improvement, that kind of a topic, and then 1 will be fiction. But I have an entire bookshelf in my office where it's just the good books that I've read that as we encounter different things here as a team or as a company, I'll say, I was like, here, read that, and come back to me in a month and talk to me about if you agree with what's being said there. So reading has been important to me.
Give me an example of like two of your favorites, or two of the ones that moved you the most.
Daring Greatly is a good one.
What's that about?
I think she uses, I think it might be Eisenhower, one of your former presidents, has made a speech about it's not the victor that is the actual winner. It's the person that got into the stadium and competed in the first place, and having the balls to take those big leaps. Mm-hmm. So I identified really closely with that. Because as I look back, who wrote that? Brene Brown, I think it is.
Yeah, that name's getting tossed around my house recently.
Is it really?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a very, very good book.
Jenny had to read a book for her leadership team at her company.
Yeah.
And it's like a leadership book club.
And Brene Brown is one of
That's the one she's doing right now.
But is it that book or is it another one?
I don't know if it's this book.
Because I've read a couple of hers. She's pretty good.
I was so interested in what she was telling me that her leadership thing's doing, that when they do their Zoom with their book club breakdown, I'm going to be over here like, I'm going to be in the corner listening because I want to hear what a massive government contractor's doing for their leadership team and how they're analyzing literature like that. I'm going to absorb it.
Another one, most of Malcolm Gladwell's books.
What are those about?
He goes in a bit more into the psychology behind it. So the one I'm reading right now is actually a Malcolm Gladwell one, and it's about knowing the person you're talking to. And one of the examples of one of the life examples he uses is the British Prime Minister pre-World War II met Hitler 3 or 4 times in person, shook his hand, had him sign an informal agreement that he wasn't going to invade Poland or wherever was his first, and being caught, and the discrepancy between the people that are genuinely earnest and honest about their interaction and the people that have the disconnects between being able to portray that but not actually being it. So, completely different topic, not business related, it's human related.
Right.
But it's interesting.
In undergrad, I did undergrad in psychology, and it was incredibly beneficial as a salesman, as a manager, as a leader. Mm-hmm. I mean, understanding how to communicate with people, like you said, whether it's eye contact, nonverbal cues. It's also great in negotiation, and your whole life is a negotiation.
One of the best trainings I had in the city with one of the larger companies, because of the people we were meeting, was nonverbal communication. It was a day dedicated to what does the body language mean? What does the eye contact mean? If you're extending your hand for a handshake and the other person's hand is on top, what posture are they assuming with you? That fascinating stuff. But I could immediately apply it into everyday life, and then the cultures, whether it was the embassy of Qatar, the ambassador of Qatar, and the way his customs are, and whether there's a custom of haggling versus not haggling or negotiating in different ways. I love that stuff. Yeah. Love it.
I enjoy that also. I was in a program called Leadership West Virginia, similar to Leadership Jefferson, but it was the state version. Mm-hmm. And the first day, one of the things we learned was business etiquette, and it talked about a lot of that sort of stuff.
Yeah,
it was really good. It was a very, very well produced. I struggle with distractions, so when I go to read, I can't read.
Okay.
Right? And
do you use Audible or something instead?
I've tried to use Audible, but I'm learning, because I mean, in the new learning or time management, I don't have time to break out the book and read, and there are enough distractions, whether it's a dog, or Jenny says something, or the TV goes turned on, or whatever it is. My brain's not calculating page by page, and I might need to read each page twice to really retain the information. Now, I tried doing a book on tape or like Audible for a book that I just bought. So I bought it twice. I listen to Audible while I'm walking the dogs for an hour, and then the next day I'll read those pages.
Yeah.
And I'm pulling it in that way, and I'm retaining the information. But then...
So that says something more about your that's your learning technique.
Exactly, yeah. But based on how I want to learn, which is usually grad school level, global kind of concepts, it's hard for me to pull out of books, whether it's Audible or the written part, what the important parts are that I need to retain or that I would want to retain. And it's hard for me to categorize everything in there for me to learn it. But somehow when I'm driving my car listening to podcasts, in particular Rogan,
yes,
I'm able to, I think because my mind is active with driving, I'm able to stay in the conversation like I'm in the room with them.
Okay.
So I have to focus most of my energy on not hitting anybody and drive my truck right. And then I'm in this conversation like they're in the back seat talking. And somehow I'm able to retain and then back it up or play it again. So that's become my new version of learning. And I've been enjoying hardcore history, which is something that really apply to business.
Yeah.
But it's nice to hear new stories. But that's kind of been my move of learning, because it's not coming necessarily from a primary source. It's coming from somebody's perspective on information. So it's not like you don't take it as law, but it's neat on how to apply it.
I would come at it from a different... So if I'm reading a book, I don't want to know the book. I don't need to learn the book. I approach a book the same way that I would approach a conference. And if I'm going to a conference or a meeting or a mastermind group, all I'm looking for is one nugget. If I pay for a flight to Denver for a 2-day conference, and I come back with one nugget from that conference that I can immediately apply into the business, that will make the value of the ticket worth it, then that's my value. And when I'm reading a book, that's kind of how I look at it. If I'm taking one good thing away from it, that's cool, but then I'll go back to that book a couple of years later and reread it, and I'll take something else from
Different,
it. Yeah. So it's not about kind of looking to learn the book like you'd learn a poem and try to understand what the poet was saying. It's like, okay, where I am in life right now, what am I taking out of this book that I can improve my life with now?
It's possible too that I love that, and I totally agree. And I'm analyzing myself as you're talking. It's possible that I'm reading a kind of content where an expert is just vomiting all their information in 15 chapters.
Yep.
And maybe I just need to commit to one chapter, right? Instead of like trying to grasp the whole concept.
Yeah.
And it might just be, the content that I'm trying to digest also. But you mentioned conferences.
Yeah.
And the mastermind. So tell me about the benefits of those to you as well. Before
COVID, I thought they were invaluable. Now, post-COVID, I think they're crucial. So I didn't realize there's two elements. The first element is the mastermind groups. The way the mastermind group works is once a quarter, we will meet in 4 different cities around the country, and we pick a topic. So January's topic, which is actually happening this week virtually because of COVID, is systems and controls. So it's just an in-person 48-hour sit-down conference where you're looking at your existing business systems and either building new ones, honing existing ones, or tweaking anything that you need to tweak within the business. And it's work in that I'm working from whatever 9 in the morning till 6 at night, but I'm working on the business. I'm removed from it. It's a dedicated location with 60 to 70 other people, not in property management. They're just business owners. So some could own painting companies or landscape companies. There could be some doctors in there. So there's this kind of amalgamation of all different types of people, totally different backgrounds, that are just business owners. So the ideas that are coming out aren't coming out cloaked because you're in fear of your competitor doing better than you. They're just like openly sharing, hey, this is what works for me. But the other value that I didn't realize was the mental health positives out of it, because going to places like San Diego for 2 or 3 days, if the conference is on a Saturday, Sunday, I'll fly out on a Thursday to that city and then spend Friday as a tourist.
Right.
And there was a mental health adjustment that I was getting from those trips that I haven't been able to get for the last year. I haven't been on a plane since February last year.
Right.
Where I would usually be on one twice a quarter, so eight flights a year. And that doesn't include going home to Ireland.
Well, that's interesting that you tell me about how that mastermind concept works. That's something I've been trying to build here in Jefferson County for about 3 years.
Okay.
Just creating the concept. And actually this podcast became part of that, because what happened was I knew as a business owner my wife didn't want to hear about all my challenges day to day. She just wasn't on the same vibration wavelength or whatever. But I know that my colleagues around me can understand the stresses, because we're all small business and we're in the same sort of grind together. And I was like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start with like 4 different businesses. One was a landscaper, one was a restaurant owner, and one was a professional services provider, and me. Mm-hmm. We're going to get together, we're going to drink a beer at the bar, and we're going to talk and bitch about stuff. And we're all going to help each other like a therapy session. Got the first one off the ground, but I picked up that people afterwards were going back to work.
Okay.
And I was like, oh.
This is a happy hour?
Yeah.
And they're going, oh.
They're going to go back to work, which meant
they used to work less.
They had, exactly. So instead of going home to like kind of digest what we talked about, and then I realized they were only coming to the meeting because they knew that I put a lot of thought into it, and that I made it important that they show up. So they almost showed up out of guilt or obligation, instead of gathering what they could get from this open conversation. Then I realized, so through that I realized that none of the 4 of us had time. It was work or family and work probably equally, and then if there was more time, more work. If there was more time, definitely more family. If there was more time, free time, go fishing. And it was like 9 or 10 where we're at a level of personal improvement or personal business improvement. It was so far down that people really weren't ever going to show up. So I was like, oh man, that sucks. All right, so what if I pin down one person and I have a conversation about challenges that we're having? I can record it, and if anybody actually gave a shit, if they even wanted to, if they thought maybe they'll learn something, they can go listen to the podcast. I don't have to record this, dude. You and I go get a beer, talk shop, good to go. Yeah. Right?
Like I said, that the whole point of having to chat with you today was to have a meaningful conversation with a business owner.
I know.
Right? That's
Bro, I'm setting it up. Don't worry. I am setting this up
often.
So that what I want to create is juicier. Right? And that's what I want you to be involved in.
Okay.
And I haven't even pitched you on it yet, but it's going to hit you one day. But what I realized was not everybody has the time to carve out unless it's recorded. I'm too busy. I almost canceled today because of a freak snowstorm in Winchester. But I was like, I had a guy who took care of it. I was like, I'll go podcast. I'll do the podcast. Good to go. Because I can trust my guys to do the work, right? But I was trying to create this concept, and I kept getting more and more cynical about it, because I realized that we just aren't available. There's more priorities. And it has to do with how addicted to the system or the game or the business that we are. Mm-hmm. And if a big deal comes up and I can't come to this meeting because I got to go set up my guys for something, then I'm sacrificing one for the other, right? But I'm inches away from having the first meeting from what you actually just described, which is a meeting of 4 or 5 people that own businesses of a certain size with a 3-topic agenda. You cannot talk about anything except for these 3 things, whether it's just 2 people talking or the whole group or just getting a perspective or maybe I'm helping somebody, maybe somebody's helping me in the conversation. I'm trying to create that right here with an exclusive small group because I need therapy. And having talks with you would be therapy.
Yep.
Talking to Daryl is therapy. even if it is during my bench press session, Daryl. Even if. So.
Oh, Daryl is the SVG cleaning guy?
Yeah.
Yes.
And sometimes he ambushes me when I'm on like bicep curls or something. And I'm like, bro, I'm trying to get my workout. I love it. But we had that great energy though.
Yeah.
Right? So you'll be hearing more about that. But I know it is something for a very small community. And it's something that I think really has a good future because many of us need it. But we have to understand the importance, like you said, the mental reset. Pulling one thing out of it. And we ain't got to go to Denver. Like it's right in Charlestown. Like we can actually talk to each other and have that kind of sort of conversation. And of course, once COVID is cleaned up and all that, but still.
So a couple of things need to happen for it to succeed. Mm-hmm. Right. One is people do prioritize things. So the first thing to do is to decide, right, which is business owners understand that. It's decide, then it's going to happen, right? So you decide it's going to happen. The next thing you're going to have to do is get the value in quick so the people that are there see enough value to prioritize it. Because once it's prioritized, then the decision is I'm going to go to that because it's a priority.
Right.
And as a business owner, the third secret for you locally, the reason I think it works so well for me going to these San Diego, Denver, Tampa, beautiful cities, right?
Yeah.
One in Maui at the end of each year as well. It's easy to consider yourself away.
Separate. Yeah.
Separate. So the secret might be to put it in the workday. Because then it is work. The value buy-in is that you're working on your business during your business day while you're working. So it becomes a part of your workday as opposed to it tagged on the end of the workday where you've got to go to your family.
Yeah, we recently talked about maybe a breakfast even.
Or yeah. So I think time of day would be important.
Well, that's the thing. And then I thought I have to tie it back to my bros and bras roots. The bros and bras. It doesn't matter if you show up at all.
Right.
There's no judgment, no expectations. Like if you don't want to show up, if you're gonna run, I don't feel like running. I'm gonna walk. That's okay. You can walk. Right down to the basic nature of if you don't feel like showing up for 2 weeks, it's okay. We still love you. It'll be all right. Just keep coming back if you want to. Right. If I put that into what's called the good company, now that I named it Good Company WV. Come to good company if you want to. You're going to gain something positive out of it. Or you're going to help somebody and it'll be positive for them. You're all going to come out of it feeling great and refreshed and revived. Let's do it. I'm this close to making that first appointment with people. And I like your idea. There's two ways, though. One idea is make it part of the workday. Breakfast or like it's just this time once a month or whatever. You know what I'm saying? The other idea would be, all right, we're going to Berkeley Springs. That takes us all just outside of our scope. So it's like, or we're going to Manassas. You know what I'm saying? Like somewhere that's just, you got to reset to get there. Mm-hmm. I'm going because I want to go. But that might be just too much work or too technical. But anyways, look, dude, you're gonna get the invite. I've had my targets on you for a while, and I'm like, I like what Patrick's doing. I need to get to know him better. I wanted the world to know what Blackwell is. Also, not so much like a commercial, but to really promote your business. Which is here's the deal, mate. You see the Blackwell signs around. You don't know you're the biggest. That's amazing, man. That really is something to be so proud of.
Thank you.
It's such hard work. And you are handling the growth and success professionally, it sounds like. And especially right in the center of COVID, to not fold is really something.
Yeah, isn't it hilarious that kind of success number one coming into 2021 was that we're still here?
Yeah, totally right.
We made it.
I know. Well, there's more to come, all right?
Okay.
Tying back to Blackwell.
Yeah.
How does somebody know that they should call you? Or when is the right time to call Blackwell? Hit me with it.
Most of our clients call at the wrong time. So most of our clients are calling when they are on their third or fourth month of unpaid rent with a tenant they haven't heard from for that entire length of time, and they want to figure out how to evict. That's the wrong time.
Right.
everything's already broken. The house is probably trashed. Like it's a disaster. We don't take those clients. I don't want that. Mm-hmm. That's how I'd rather give you a little bit of advice for free as to how to go and file for eviction than take on that mess. The right time would be if you are committed to the fact that you want and need a tenant, and you want someone that's better qualified to handle that tenant than you. That's it. Our best clients, the best people at that, are investor buyers, because...
And that's somebody who's buying a property they know they want to turn into a rental property.
Exactly.
Okay.
Because they've committed already to some kind of business plan in their own mind where that house is a business. And whoever's in it has no emotional attachment to them, nor does the house. So when things go wrong, there's not this emotional connection, and that brings you to panic level about anything that happens to this house. A lot of our owners, because when we opened in 2011, a lot of those owners were very much emotionally attached to their house. This was home. They got transferred for work or had to move for other reasons. They couldn't sell the house. They were upside down in it. They were emotionally attached to the shrubs out front. They were emotionally attached to the colour of the paint. So when someone lives in it, that tenant is living in their home, as in the owner's home. It's never the tenant's home.
Right. And
it's very difficult to ever please, first of all, an owner that is that connected to a house. That any modification, like a change in paint colour, or they aren't trimming the shrubs as regularly as they would, or those minor details. Whereas an investor buyer, or a buyer less emotionally, or a homeowner less emotionally connected, understands that the person living in this house is who is considering this house home, and allows us the flexibility and the breadth we need to accommodate that tenant living that way.
Okay. Well, I'll tell you what. Like I said, I was a customer of Blackwell.
Yeah.
And every transaction went wonderfully. Whether it was a refrigerator that worked too well, or a leaky pipe in the basement, or a leak in the bay window, or somebody deciding they wanted to move out, or us deciding we wanted to sell.
Mm-hmm.
That got sticky because we had a tenant in there, and we had to give them like some notice, and
she really wanted to buy it but couldn't qualify to buy it.
Oh, that's right.
That was an extra
and
layer.
Things were moving really fast.
Yeah.
And me not seeing them as a person, but seeing them as a tenant,
mm-hmm.
and seeing them as a barrier to us selling the house, you guys definitely showed more empathy and more professionalism, and I believe got her into another house, like down the street, because she loved the neighborhood.
Yep.
So not only are you working for the owner of the property, but you're also working with the tenants. That's. I think you can't ask for much more than that, Patrick.
Yeah, I agree with that. And one of the first lines I say to new hires is I ask them a question. If someone's calling Blackwell, what do they want? And they're like, a house, or they need something fixed. I say, yeah, but what do they want? What does that person want? And the answer is help.
Right.
I opened Blackwell because I like helping people. I'm a helper. Whether that's the homeowners like yourself to rent out the houses, tenants that are looking for nice houses to live in, employees looking for good careers. I'm trying to help people. And one of the most enjoyable parts of the business owner journey is seeing how I'm helping.
I love that. That's great. I think that's where we wrap up. Did we miss anything?
No, I have no idea how long have we been talking?
Don't worry about it.
Okay.
It's maybe the longest one we've ever done. Which is cool. Okay. No, because there's a lot to come in the future. Ladies and gentlemen, Patrick Blood, Blackwell Property Management. There's the old logo. If the video works, you can see the old logo. We'll see if the video works. You know how that goes, people. As always, though, Patrick, thank you for being on the podcast.
Yeah, it's been amazing. Thanks a lot.
Right on. And this podcast was brought to you by who? Bracken's Painting, the Eastern Panhandle's best painter. voted most awesome painter by whatever publication you read in their survey. Totally not true, but we are very good. And, luckily I have very talented guys on board right now. As of January, we are only 4 to 5 weeks booked out, but we priced, since COVID, we have priced, I believe, 160 houses. We've only painted 30 of them, which means many of them have not been painted yet, and we're going to get stacked up. So you can find us at brackenspainting.com or Facebook or Instagram or all those things. If you want me to come out and take a look at your project, whether it's commercial, residential, or industrial, please let me know. Thanks for listening to the Break It Down for Brackens podcast. The intro and background music you're hearing today on the podcast is produced and written and performed by Peter Clark from his album Peter Clark After Dark. This song is actually called Finely Tanned Beer Guts. I used to have a beer gut. Sometimes it was tan. I don't know if it was finely tanned. It was definitely a hairy kind of tanned beer gut. But I don't really know much about why this song is named this or where he drew his inspiration. But you can hear the full song on Peter Clark After Dark, which you can search on SoundCloud.